I did a collaboration with Andre 3000 on the brand Tree Torn. We finished the shoes, and now we're talking about how the shoe gets released. So Andre, he's gonna hate that I say this. He has this idea where like, imagine the shoes at Foot Locker, but there's a force field covering the shoe so that you can't touch the shoe. And you actually have to ask the employee to turn off the force field in order to be able to touch the shoe. Andre 3000, Outcast, Aquemini, you know what I'm talking about. And he's saying this straight face to me, like we should create a force field for every Foot Locker in the world. By this time, I have already worked enough with Andre to know like where his head's at. I could never tell him the technology does not exist because he would be like, let's build the technology. So instead, what I said was, yeah, but Andre, imagine the inconvenience of every time someone wanted to try a shoe on, the employee's got to go back, turn off the force field, turn it back on. He's like, you know what? You're right. That's mad inconvenient. No force field. That's the power of collaboration right there.
Obsessed with detail, sneakers episode.
What's up? My name is Jeff Staple. I'm a designer and a storyteller. And 20 years ago, I made sneakerheads lose their mind. This is obsession to detail.
Let's set the scene. Where were you in your career when this opportunity with Nike came about? What was your mindset at the time? Let's just back there.
Oh, I gotta go Wayne's World.
Excellent!
So in 1997, I started my brand Staple. And I started my brand Staple right out of Parsons School of Design by literally breaking and entering into the silkscreen lab to illegally print t-shirts after hours. That's how I started my brand in 97. When that brand started to take off and get some notoriety in downtown New York City, because I'm a trained graphic designer, a lot of companies, and whether it's magazines or record labels or rap artists, just had me do odd projects here and there of like, can you design me this album cover, this party flyer, you know, this magazine. One of those magazines that asked me to help out was a publication called The Fader magazine. It was really one of the first magazines that combined music, fashion, gaming, art, everything into one, whereas before that, magazines were very segmented. So I came on as art director for The Fader magazine, and I was designing every issue, every single page. And we take you back to 1998 right now, where there was a phenomenon where Nike and other sneaker brands were releasing product specifically in certain regions. So what I mean by that is in Washington, DC, they would release a shoe only for DC. They would release a shoe in Boston only for Boston, Tokyo, Amsterdam, Spain, all the rest, right? And these people who were diehard sneaker fans knew that, oh my God, this Air Force One was released in Tokyo. We don't have it. We need to figure out somebody who can get it from Tokyo to here, and then maybe they want the New York City Harlem Air Force One and they'll bring it back to Tokyo. This was all happening under the nose of Nike, not knowing that it was happening, this sort of like gray market, transcontinental pirating that was going on. That's what reselling is today. But before that, it was just dudes with empty suitcases flying back and forth. And I was on the ground floor of this. I saw it happening. I had friends that were into it. And we're talking about guys that would make $20 on a pair of shoes extra. Like they would buy a pair of Air Force Ones in Harajuku, fly to Soho, and sell it for $20 above retail. That was the whole game. So it was a cottage industry. It was tiny, right? But I was also wondering, if Nike is made aware that this is happening, why wouldn't they just supplement the demand and just release the shoes everywhere, right? Why don't they just make the distribution channels a little bit more efficient instead of making everyone fly all over the world to get these things? So I thought it was a really interesting story, and I pitched it to the publisher of The Fader, and I said, Rob, why don't you send me to Japan, right? Why don't you send me to Japan and I will do an investigative report of why this is occurring and what Nike thinks about it. And amazingly, he said yes. So I took a copy of The Fader, flew to Japan, knew nobody, don't speak a lick of Japanese, and I just hit the ground running. I would just walk into sneaker stores and I would just be like, this sneaker, who sells you this sneaker? I'm from this magazine, and I would just work my way up this like chain of command where eventually I got to VPs at Nike Japan, and eventually I got to the guy at Nike Japan that decides a shoe like this will be a shoe that we only release in Tokyo. This shoe we will only release in London. This shoe we will only release in New York, and on and on and on. So I found that one guy, sat down with him for an interview, and got the scoop. For the first time ever in history, this particular issue of The Fader magazine is already seen in and of itself as a grail of the culture, because it was really the first time this whole thing was decoded by the man himself, right? So after this 2-hour interview with Marcus, who was the guy at Nike, he says to me, like, in a real casual way, hey, so tell me more about yourself. You have this clothing line out of New York called Staple. You're obviously a sneakerhead. You designed this magazine called The Fader, and you're also writing the article. I was like, yeah. He was like, we got to get you to Beaverton, Oregon ASAP. And that was the beginning of my relationship with Nike. Soon after that, I was on a plane to Beaverton, which is Nike's headquarters, and we began talking about things that we could do together. So it started out as an investigative reporting journalistic piece and ended up becoming one of the greatest collaborations of all time. Not too many people know that whole backstory. You know, if you're a kid and your parent says, do you want to go inside the Magic Kingdom? Like, as a sneakerhead, Beaverton, Oregon is like that. It's like this hallowed ground where these magical shoes like Air Jordans are born out of, you know? And you just figure like the sidewalks are paved in golden swooshes, you know what I mean? It's just like this magical place. So to me, honestly, the idea that I was even invited to Beaverton, all my goals were already achieved. Like, if they just kicked me out afterwards, I'd be like, yeah, I did it. I went to Beaverton, you know? But man, that was the beginning, honestly. And going through that journey of like going to Japan and just doing that investigative reporting was the time of my life, because I had zero expectation that this would eventually come out of it. I was flying blind. I had no idea what I was doing. And I think that was the exciting part of it. So I'm in Beaverton, and it's honestly everything that I could have possibly dreamed it to be. You know, like there was a store on 5th Avenue and 57th Street called Nike Town. Basically, Nike Town was Nike's way of making Beaverton headquarters accessible to the public, right? I equated a lot to Walt Disney. It's every kid's dream to go to Walt Disney Studios. You're not getting into Walt Disney Studios, but he made, you know, the Magic Kingdom for you to enter and feel like you've gone there. So Nike Town was that, and I was just imagining Nike headquarters to be that times 1,000, and it was. I mean, I'm talking like handles are made out of swooshes, you know, like fine print on the manhole covers are like sayings from Bo Jackson and John McEnroe. It's just like mind-blowing shit. It was a dream come true. Then I have to sign my life away, NDA, you know, confidentiality, right? And then I'm sitting in conference rooms with these legendary footwear designers, right? These guys who have designed like the Air Forces and the Jordans and everything. Just so you know, when you work in footwear, you work about 2 to 3 years ahead of reality. This was 1999, 1998. They're showing me 2000, 2001 product. They're just throwing it out on the table. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then they start asking, what do you think? I'm like, what do I? I'm a 2-time college dropout. I have no degree. I don't play any sports professionally. Like, you know, like, I'm just like, you're asking me for my opinion? They're like, yeah, what color do you think? And then whatever I say, they just like, Jeff said this, Jeff said this. And it's just like, I'm just like, okay, let me just go with this. You know, 'cause I'm trying to like perpetrate that I'm an expert in some way, shape, or form. I'm very aware that they could just kick me out at any time. So I have to balance this like, WTF, why am I here? And I got this, I got this. They've witnessed something that they think I bring to the table. I'm at the table now, so let me just speak my truth. Let me just be authentic about it. So instead of saying to myself, what do they want me to say? Just think, Jeff, what do you actually think about this color? And say it. You know, and then you go on this tour, they're taking me to like the research lab where they have the runners like actually performing in things, the color lab, the fabric lab. I went into this legendary place called the Innovation Kitchen. The Innovation Kitchen was the lab of all labs. So you have like where people work and, you know, actually get shit done. The kitchen is like where they literally tinker with like the future. And that's where like super futuristic stuff gets made. I got to go into the employee store, which is the store that they have on campus only for employees, where they have all the latest and greatest at all the cheapest prices. They gave me an employee pass. It was a mind-blowing experience. And so out of that, there was a couple of projects that we started to work on. This legendary shoe, we actually designed about 5 or 6 different projects together before this shoe came out. And some of those projects were amazing. Sneakerheads might know it as like the Navigation Pack, the Nordic Pack, the Cortez Laser, the Rift Laser. They were developing this laser machine, literally a laser beam, that would be able to perforate on shoes. So actually on this shoe, you could see a little bit of a lasering effect right there, a little use of the laser. But the laser can adjust its intensity, so it could actually laser to the point where it perforates, or it becomes just like a hole if they wanted to, or they can score it so that it makes folding easier, or they could just decorate it like with a really light laser. So they were developing this thing and they didn't really know what to do with it, right? So Nike is so focused on the technology that I think what they miss out on, as they should, you know, sitting in Beaverton, Oregon in a laboratory, they miss out on the application on 125th Street. Like, great, we've developed this amazing thing. What does it look like in Tokyo now, you know, on a kid's foot? And that's the bridge I think they were asking of me to help translate that technology into like actual everyday usage. So for example, on one of the shoes, I was like, yo, that lasering is really, really detailed. Could we do a shoe where we laser the entire map of downtown New York City block by block? And they were like, that would be amazing. And we did it. If you look at the Nike Navigation Pack Air Max 90, it's Tribeca, Chinatown, and Soho lasered block by block on a shoe. And that's something that you can never do with silk screening or embroidery or anything. It's just the detail isn't there. And so that's a great example of how I was able to take a tech and then make it applicable for everybody. So this is part of the navigation pack. So these lines here are some of those lasering techniques. These lines happen to represent the air currents that go around Japan. So one of the shoes was downtown New York City. This one is the air currents that surround the islands of Japan. So these are the Nike Shocks, which are actually coming back into style right now as we speak. Here's another one from that Navigation Pack series. So this is the Air Burst. Here's a great example of that big old air pocket. Great for cushioning, terrible for stability. This is a great example of that. One of the biggest airbags that Nike made back then. This shoe, as you can see, it's got more lasering techniques here. And what we were trying to do here is, this is the actual air currents that go above the United Kingdom. We were trying to say New York, London, and Tokyo are the three epicenters of what I deem as burgeoning sneaker culture. So we did 3 shoes dedicated to each of those. And I called it the navigation pack because if you were to go to all these cities, you're almost like a modern day navigator, right? Before I even get to designing a shoe or the color or the patterns, I write that story. Like, what is it like to travel the world today finding grail sneakers? You're almost like Indiana Jones. You're like an archaeologist. You're like a navigator. So we're gonna create this navigation pack. All of the storytelling happens way before you even pull out a sketch pad and start designing a shoe. This is the Nike Air Stab, part of our Nordic pack, another beautiful shoe that we created. And I would actually call this pre-collaboration. This is Nike loving my vision of what I do and paying me a design fee. I'm submitting a design and they're making it. There's no Jeff Staples signature on this. This is a work for hire design. But then when the Pigeon came out, fans started to want to see what else did Jeff make for Nike. And so then they unearthed these and they were like, oh, this is a collaboration too. But truth be told, it wasn't a collaboration when we started. It was a work for hire design job. And then after the Pigeon Dunk came out, another thing that happened on February 23rd, the day after that was really funny, is these 3 guys walk into my store. They look like they're kind of like wearing Dockers with tucked in button-down shirts. They come up to me and they say, who was responsible for the Pigeon Dunk? And I come out from the back of the office and they say, we would like a riot too. They literally said those words, we would like a riot too, like they were ordering French fries and a Big Mac or something. So essentially that was their way of saying, how can we work together to create a similar magic that you created with Nike, but can we create that at Timberland? And so that began a beautiful long relationship of us working together with Timberland. This is the staple Timberland. As you can see, a lot of synergies between the Pigeon Dunk and the Pigeon Timberland. But then we started to work with other artists as well. So this one, you could see this symbol here. This is the Wu-Tang W, as most people will recognize. So this is a shoe that I co-designed with the leader of the Wu-Tang Clan. His name is the RZA. And so we created this shoe together. And I'll tell you a little bit about behind the design on this one. When RZA performs, he always wears all black. Black denim, black shirt, black top, right? And he told me, I love Timberlands, but what I want when I wear my Wu-Tang Timberland on stage, I want to look like I'm floating, like a UFO, like an alien, like I'm floating above the stage. So this entire bottom is made out of glow-in-the-dark material. So when you're in a nightclub, he's wearing all black. This is black denim on the top, and then under here is all glow-in-the-dark outsole, and it looks so cool. It's great to hear from another designer, and this is now, you could call this a 3-way collaboration, right? Because it's Timberland, me, working with the RZA and Wu-Tang Clan. I love getting all of these ideas, all of these needs, all of these special things that people want, and then kind of like a DJ, putting together a perfect blend. This is a very wearable shoe, a very wearable boot. So I love just working with different artists and creatives and brands to come up with something special like this. I have a really funny story about doing a project with the RZA. I was in Las Vegas at the time. I was at a trade show, and you know, RZA's a big star. He's also one of my heroes. Wu-Tang is forever, right? Wu-Tang is everything if you're a New Yorker. I've been waiting to meet with him to talk about this project, and we keep missing each other and stuff. And finally, he's like, all right, I've got today free. And I'm in Vegas. He's in LA at the time. I literally leave the convention that I'm attending, rent a car, and drive immediately to see him, okay? Get to his studio. It's a recording studio. He's inside the studio behind the glass, making beats, recording, doing what he's doing. The entire booth is filled with weed smoke. You can barely see inside. Every time they open the door, it's like secondary high like crazy. And I'm sitting outside and I'm waiting for him. And I understand he's a musical genius, right? But I ended up sitting there waiting for him for 3 hours. So I just drove 5 hours to meet him. And then I'm sitting in his studio waiting for 3 hours. But then he comes out, he's finished his work, and now it's time to design. And so now we're just sitting there and I'm taking notes, wildly like writing everything he's saying down. And he's just telling me the story of what he wants and what he needs out of a shoe. The idea that he wants to float, he wants to look like a UFO and an alien, what he usually wears. And I'm pushing back on some of the ideas because I'm also thinking now I'm representing Timberland in this standpoint. He might think about an idea that literally can't be done. And so I have to be the guardian of Timberland and say, well, that's not really feasible, but how about this? And so hopefully the RZA will then say like, yeah, that's a good idea too. So it's a lot of back and forth, almost like ping-ponging of ideas, Here's a couple of other newer ones that came out after the Pigeon Dunk. So this is for those fans of the Clark's Wallaby. This is another iconic shoe. What I started to think about here was, I grew up in the age of graffiti. A graffiti artist, their goal is to put their tag on as many surfaces as possible. It's called going all city. It's when you've put your tag on every single train in every single borough. And so every single city and borough sees your tag and signature. I came from that era of graffiti. I grew up loving graffiti, trying to do my little tag. And I realized what I had created here with the pigeon was a tag, almost like a graffiti artist hitting their signature on different surfaces. I was doing this too, but I was doing it with corporate America, which is really like the ultimate FU, you know what I mean? And I'm being respectful here and I'm being playful. And I love that these companies are inviting me in, but I also think of it as like, wow, I get to tag on a Wallaby. I get to tag on a Dunk. I get to tag on a Timberland, So some critics will say, hey, you just keep doing the same thing over and over again on shoes. And when I want to, I can flex on different things, but I challenge any sneakerhead out there to find one brand and one tag or one logo or one color that is extended on so many different brands, products, not even sneakers, even outside of sneakers. And that's just me as a kid living my graffiti artist dreams of tagging all over the world. So here's the Clarks. Here is a little remix, if you will. This is one of the many projects. I think I've designed damn near 50 shoes plus for Puma now, but this is one of the ones that I'm most proud of. This was an idea where when I said it in the development and design meeting, they said it's not possible. And I pushed and pushed and pushed and we made it possible. I wanted it to look like, as we know, the bottom of the pigeon's feet are always pink and we always wanted to keep that trademark, but I wanted to take it one step further where it looked like you took the shoe and dipped it into a can of pink paint and then came out with it. So you had this like full bleed effect, which is harder than it seems because what you're dealing with is you're dealing with foam, rubber, leather, suede, another piece of leather, and then a pigeon emboss. All of these things are not literally dipped. That's not how you make it. They have to be manufactured separately, then assembled to make it look like there was a consistent dip. But the color matching on all these different fabrics was going to be very challenging. And then the other thing is the idea that it would just stop here like that was also a big challenge. So we went through a lot of rounds of doing this and they finally got it right. And I think this is also why if you put yourself in the shoes, no pun intended, of the collaborator side, right? The company side, the billion-dollar organization side, why would this billion-dollar company work with little old me, an individual person? It's because we push the envelope, Foot Locker is not gonna make you do this, the Athlete's Foot is not gonna make you do this, but I will ask you to do it and I will push you to do it. And now that Puma went through the time and effort to figure this out, now they can utilize this technology and this technique in all the other shoes that they're gonna do in the future and make billions of dollars hopefully off of this, which is great because that just shows, man, we did this thing and you know where it started? When Jeff Staple forced us to do it. We finally figured it out. So I love pushing the envelope in a respectful way, but not to the point of breaking them. I have friends that are real design divas, and it's like my way or the highway, right? I don't wanna go that far. I wanna be collaborative. I don't wanna be completely disruptive to their supply chain. So that's just a couple of the other collaborations that we worked on. This is the latest collaboration that we're working on. This is the first time we are working with this brand. A lot of you might know this brand, but you might not know this brand as the cool guy brand. You might know this brand as the brand you wear when you pick up your kids from soccer or when you go grocery shopping on the weekends. This is Brooks. Brooks is a performance running brand. They are actually the #1 performance running brand in America by market share. They have over 23% market share of performance running, but they've never done anything, I'm gonna put cool in air quotes. They've done cool stuff, but they've never done anything directed at youth culture, sneaker culture, or fashion. I have been running in Brooks for well over a decade now. It's my favorite shoe to actually run in. And sometimes I'll run in a shoe, I'll go for a jog, And then my friends will want to meet up and have lunch and get dinner. And I always have to remember I have to go home and change my shoes because I can't be wearing Brooks out to like meet friends in public, right? Brooks is only a running shoe. But sometimes they'll get it right. If you make enough shoes, eventually you'll get one that's like, oh shit, that's actually really nice. And I could actually wear that out with my friends hanging out. And I started to think like, man, why isn't Brooks the #1 running shoe in the world? Why aren't they tapping into this so that like people like me and my friends and my community actually want to wear them all the time, not just on the racetrack? As I was buying Brooks and running in them, I would start tagging them on Instagram. I've been doing this for 8 years now, right? I would tag them on Instagram and then they, sometimes double tap it and give me the heart. And then I'd message them. I'd be like, hey, we should have a conversation. I've done a few things in sneakers. We should talk about sneakers, right? And so 8 years go by of meetings, talking, looking, investigating. A lot of this actually was not about design and development. This was about developing trust. And when two companies or two brands come together, first, like in any relationship, you have to gain trust. I would say I spent 5+ years gaining trust with Brooks because from Brooks's mentality, they thought we've built an empire here. We're the #1 performance running shoe brand. If we take our eye off the prize and start making cool guy shit and fashion shit, we might lose our hold as the #1 running brand. And I fully respected that. But it took many years and many meetings for me to convince them that we can do this in a way where it will not disrupt, it will only enhance and be additive to your existing business. One of the things that we did when we first started to work with them, I wanted to dig into their archives. Brooks is over 100-year-old company, and so they have tons of amazing stuff in the archives. So we went back in time and dug through one of their best shoes from 2002. So this is a 25-year-old plus shoe, and this is the Brooks Adrenaline GTS 4 from 2002 with our spin and remix on it. So the shoe alone, even if it was a blank slate, because it's been mothballed for 2 decades, when it comes out now, to me, it looks completely fresh. It looks totally today. And I think part of what I bring to the table is that curatorial lens of being able to spot something that is one man's trash and say, no, pull that out of the trash bin. You've got some magic here. Let's tweak it a little bit, improve it, and this is ready for 2025 market. I realize that not everyone is able to do that. It's almost like a wine connoisseur, like this bottle is ready to be opened. And this is the 4th Adrenaline. This shoe is called the Adrenaline. This is number 4. If you follow the path of like Air Jordan, you would go back to Air Jordan 1. You would go back to Air Force 1. You'd go back to the beginning. But I looked at the Adrenaline 1, and the Adrenaline 1 is not quite there yet. But I looked at the other ones and I said the 4 is ready right now. So we pulled the 4 out of the archives. We did our rendition on it, which as you can compare to the Nike Pigeon Dunk, it's quite different. Coming from a runner's mentality, you want to put something on that makes you feel like you can conquer the world. So I've made it much more aggressive with all the lines. There's also a lot of reflectivity on this because if you're running in this, you want headlights to be able to spot you. The one thing that I didn't know, and this is really interesting, every other sneaker brand that I've ever worked with, when you want to retro a shoe, retro means pull it out of the archive as is and re-release it. But Brooks said something really interesting. They were like, okay, we're down to release the 2002 Adrenaline. We just have to go through run testing on this now. I was like, wait, what? Run testing? I was like, no, you actually don't have to do that. They're like, oh no, we do. We're Brooks. We're actually like a running company. And I was like, wow, that's annoying, but also awesome, So this has the fit and feel of a 2025 performance running shoe, but looks like a 2002 retro runner. It feels amazing all day. And I think that care and pride that they have in their work is absolutely amazing. So I love working with them, and it's gonna be the first time that Brooks has done a collaboration. It's gonna be the first time that Brooks has done a collaboration on a heritage product. It's gonna be the first time that they pull a shoe out of the archives, and this won't be the last time. So this is the beginning of a great relationship with Brooks Running.